I get a unexpected call from one of our previous clients that we just finished a video for. Always kind of a little nerve-wracking. It's like, oh no, what are they calling about? They called and they're like, hey, we had hired another company to do a video before we knew you guys. It's not going well. We want to meet with you guys and see if you can take over the project. I don't know the company. I don't know why it didn't work out for them. I'm just going to share with you our observations from working on the back end of kind of trying to clean up the mess that was created, and some of the things that we can draw from that. Holy crap, I'm burning my tortilla. Ah! Let that be a lesson. No vlogging while cooking tortillas. Oh gosh, I filled this place up with smoke. It's sad to me that this company wasn't able to finish the video. That's money that they could have made that they didn't. And they had it priced well. I imagine that it was a very big project for them. They used that money to go buy new cameras. I'm pretty sure it was filmed on the C200. And that's where a large portion of the budget went. Been in that boat. It happens. Then they got to the end of it and they realized, holy crap, we shot a bunch of stuff in RAW. It appears like they didn't have a vision for what they were shooting. They were just shooting stuff. But I don't want to get lost in the weeds. We're going to try to keep this one really more about organization because there's other things that we could talk about in terms of vision and business stuff. But opening up the original hard drive, this is what it looked like, minus the color coding. The color coding we did to try to make sure that we copied everything over. So opening it up, immediately, I don't quite know what I'm looking at. Kind of diving into it, this and this are actually part of the same project. This and all these assets are actually part of this project. But then this project actually has content that is supposed to go to this one. Also has content from here. Let's see here. Yeah, content from here that's actually supposed to be part of here. But you get the point, it just wasn't clear. It took about 6 or 7 hours to go through and organize all the footage. What was interesting is there was a lot of duplicate folders. There'd be duplicate folders, but not with the same footage. So the folders were called the exact same. One folder would have 3 videos. The other folder would have those same 3 videos plus 2 other ones. So it just was lots of different areas that the content was being pulled from. They didn't know what they had footage-wise, and it caused confusion. Okay, so with that, we're going to talk about 3 tips to having a proper workflow so you don't lose a client. Obviously, that stuff was recorded a few months ago, as you can tell by the hair. The first part of the workflow that is super crucial is the foundational part, which is organization. Organization itself is broken down into several parts, and the first of that is obvious titles. Let me demonstrate. So we personally organize our projects into the years that they're being worked on. We go into here. So we have the obvious title of what the client is, and then within it, we have even more obvious titles for us. So render is where the final versions go, location scouting documents, graphics are any of the graphical assets that we work on. Content are where all the video and audio elements go into. In this case, it's all based off of what the shot list was. And it's all broken down to something that's very intelligible for someone to access. Okay, the next part of the organization system is numbering. Numbering, we find, becomes really helpful, especially when you get tons and tons of folders or tons and tons of different projects and videos. And typically, your computer will organize it alphabetically. Then things will always be shifting and changing, but if you number it, 01, 02, 03, they will always be in that order. The number itself in this case doesn't have any pertinence to what it is, it's just the order in which they arrived. But for example, if we came in here and added this project which we just started working on called cache recovery, because it's a C, it would have actually gone up here. And so even though it's the latest project we're working on, it would have been at the top of the file structure. So it just gets confusing. So in this case, we did it with the labeling system, so it just makes it easy for someone to find. Now we always start our file names with zeros. That way, once we get into the tens, some computers will organize it differently. For example, it'll put 1 next to 10 because they both start with a 1. So that's why we start with 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. That way when we get up to 10, it's 10, 11, 12. If we know we're doing a project where we're going to get into the hundreds, we start with 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 2, and so on. The last part of the organization tip is replication. Once you kind of figure out what your system's going to be, make sure you replicate it on all the other projects afterward. That way, say you have to go back in a few years to a project that a client asks for, a graphic update or something, you know exactly how everything is labeled and ordered. For us, when we make changes to our system, we go back the past 2 years and replicate that file structure organization into our past projects, so we retroactively update it. But that just allows us to where, when we need to find that rendered file, we know that it's in the rendered folder, whereas before we used to call it the finals folder. So just kind of changing those little systems so that everything's up to date. The next key part to the workflow is the rough stage. So first we had the organization stage, now we move into the rough stage. The rough stage as well has 3 kind of key components which help the project to move forward without going too far before communicating with the client, that we'll get to a little bit later. In the rough stage, that's when we're creating the project files, that's when we're putting everything into the project files, that's when we're doing renders and stuff like that. Probably the most crucial parts that we found is making sure that there's version numbers labeled properly within each project file, and that there is labeled properly the application version that you're working in. Let me demonstrate. So in this case, this was a course number 202. This is version 2 of this project. If it has a crash and you were working on version 1, if you load one of the autosaves, it will ask you to make a new version number, so then we name that one version 2. We verify, we make sure it works, and if it all works, then we can go ahead and delete version 1. Now right here you can see that this is the version number of Premiere that it was edited in. It makes it super easy to go back and be like, oh, 11.1, right click, open with, Adobe Premiere version 11.1. That just keeps you from having a whole bunch of issues with loading the projects where maybe certain features don't work, or they completely changed, or your color corrections load differently. It just saves you time. The next kind of key part about the rough stage is making sure that while you're working in your timeline, you have a sense of communication just visually through your timeline. For us, for example, all of our editors know that when we're going through a string out, the string out is literally just all of the B-roll or all the content slapped onto a timeline, strung out. And then as our editors go through and we find something that, hey, this is a great shot, this is a great clip, don't quite know where I'm going to use it, but it's good, we up it to video level layer number 2. That way, anybody who comes to our projects, they can already know, oh, these are the keeper clips. These are the ones that the editor had designated as a possibility. With us and our team, we do the rose color in Premiere Pro, and I forget what they call it in Davinci Resolve. That's our needs correction color. So anybody can go into a project timeline and can look in and say, oh, cool, this one needs correction. If we're doing email communication back and forth with some of our other editors, our editors will send like a map that says, hey, blue means this, green means this. And we just try to make it to where everything has its own type of communication within the project file. And just like the organization system in part 1 with the folder structure itself, keeping the same kind of system within your actual project files is super helpful and just a big key to not losing a client by just being disorganized and messing things up. As part of the rough section, we do renders, and one of the biggest things is never label anything final, because you never know if that's going to actually be the final. It's like, well, which one's the actual final? So again, going back to the obvious titles, a little bit of a repeat of section 1 organization, is just make sure you have it obviously labeled. If we're sending something off to the composer, we label that one music. If it's a rough, we label it version, whatever the client name is, rough version 1.2, helps them know that they're getting a rough. And then when we get to the near final ones, we just label it as, for example, we were working on a client called Vision Tracks. It was labeled Vision Tracks version 2.3. And then they got back to us with some feedback. The next one was version 2.4. When we did major step like color correction or adding music, that ups it to the next level to where it's going to be 3.1 or something like that. Again, just facilitates communication. Okay, so moving on to the next part, we move into the final stage, which is what we call the refinement stage. Now, there's a lot of details behind the refinement stage in terms of the video side, but really the one that I want to focus on that's the greatest tip to make sure that we don't lose clients is the idea of communication. The refinement stage is really all about communicating, making sure that the needs of the client are properly assessed, and that they're getting the product that they want. I cannot stress how important communication is. From the project that we were talking about at the beginning of the video, when the client received the video, they were told, here's the final product, or here's the near final. What do you guys think? When they saw it, it wasn't even close to what they were wanting or what they had even originally discussed. Now, a lot of times it's easy for that to happen because, for example, in this project, they were getting paid around, I think, $30,000, something like that. You know, that's a big project, relatively speaking. When you're getting paid that much, it's easy to think, oh, I'm the professional. I have to know how all this happens. I have to make sure I take care of everything, and it's all on me. And when really that's not the case. Yeah, you're getting paid a lot of money to be the professional, but a professional communicates. That's why the rough is such a crucial part of sending over the rough edit. We inform them what this has and what this doesn't have. This does not have the color correction. This does not have audio mixing. This only has the basic story, but we wanted to get your feedback. Is this going in the right direction? Sometimes it's nerve-wracking to send that to them, especially the first one. The first look is always kind of a bit scary, but it allows them to get back and say, oh, hey, wow, I love everything about that. This part feels too slow. Or, oh, hey, you should use our color. That's part of our branding because the blue doesn't fit. Sending that over and allowing for that communication offers up so many possibilities. As part of this communication tip, kind of another part of it is making sure you have communication with your team, especially about the former things, with the organization, with the rough. Make sure you're communicating throughout that whole process. If every time someone looks for a file, they're looking for the file in a different folder, and that keeps happening again and again, maybe that means your file's in the wrong folder, and it should be changed or should be renamed because it just doesn't make sense. And kind of the third part of this step of communication is something that I believe has allowed us to be very successful, which is the thought process of over-communicate. Always over-communicate. I know sometimes it's kind of annoying and you feel like you're being annoying to over-communicate, but when people are transacting money for something, it never hurts to over-communicate. What I mean by over-communicate is, take for example, we send out an email to a client about a meeting. They say, yeah, cool, let's meet on Thursday. I'll respond to them and say, okay, cool, great. We'll meet on Thursday, the 27th, 2018, at 11 o'clock a.m. at your building at such and such address. You know, even though those details have already been talked about, it just kind of gives you that one step of assurance to where, hey, I threw out all those details. It's easy for them to get back and say, oh, no, sorry, we're going to be meeting at the other building. You know, even on things when things go wrong. Sometimes it hurts to try to communicate stuff, but it's not a bad thing. For example, we had 3 or 4 client projects that were all due by the end of this one particular week, and we were in the process of switching our old computer out for a new computer, and our old computer went kerplunk. It just could not communicate with our network server anymore. Who knows why, but it just died. And so we quickly had to try to implement our new computer, but it wasn't quite up and running 100%. Things were going to have to be delayed. We reached out to our client and explained the situation, explaining that our editing server had gone down. We had the second one that was getting implemented and it's just quite not working 100%. We notified them, hey, all of your footage, everything is completely safe on our server and redundant backups. We'll keep you updated, but it looks like we'll be able to deliver those videos not on Saturday, but on Monday or Tuesday. Everybody was completely fine with it. One of the clients actually reached out to us and was like, hey, thanks so much for communicating it. You know, even though it was a delay and it was unfortunate on everybody's side, it's better than just waiting for them to reach out to us or hoping they don't notice. I know for me emotionally, sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, I can't tell them that it's going to be delayed, or I can't tell them it's going to be one day later. But if you word it correctly and, you know, thank them for understanding, things work out great. I hope you guys never have to go through what that other company went through. Having to lose a big project because you just couldn't handle it. The only difference between big projects and small projects is the number of details that you have to keep track of. These workflow tips hopefully can help you guys keep track of all those details. The work from the company that we received stuff from, did you see any of it?
Yes, it was lousy.
Any insights on that?